I signed a report that morning knowing one mistake could cost someone their life. It was just another Tuesday in Phoenix, 6:40 a.m. Coffee still too hot to drink. My phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter, then stopped. An hour later, a man I'd never met was lying on concrete, unable to feel his legs. That night, my son asked if I still trusted my own handwriting. I didn't notice the file timestamp was off by 3 minutes. I would soon learn everything I believed about being right was wrong. I wake up every weekday at 5:30 a.m. No alarm, no snooze. My body does it for me now. 27 years in construction, safety teaches you one thing early. If you're late, someone else pays for it with their bones. The house is quiet at that hour. Not peaceful quiet in the way an empty parking lot is quiet. My place sits in a beige subdivision on the west side of Phoenix. All stucco and gravel yards, built fast during the last housing boom. I bought it after the divorce because it was clean, new, and required nothing from me emotionally. No creaky floorboards, no memories baked into the walls. I put the kettle on and stand at the counter in bare feet, reading the same magnet stuck to the fridge that's been there for years. Safety is not optional. One of the suppliers gave it to me at a conference in Vegas. I never took it down. Not because it's clever, because it's true. By 5:45, the coffee is poured. By 5:50, I'm in the shower. By 6:15, I'm dressed in pressed jeans, steel-toe boots, and a faded navy button-down with my name stitched over the pocket. E. Walker Inspections. I don't wear a suit. People trust you less in a suit on a job site. At 6:40, I'm out the door. Phoenix mornings are deceptive. Cool air, pale sky, the kind of calm that makes you forget what noon will feel like. I back the truck out. Same route every day. Same right turn past the dry wash. Same gas station with the flickering digital sign that's been stuck on 4.19 for 6 months. The radio stays off. I spend all day listening to people talk. Mornings are for silence. I've been a licensed construction safety inspector since my late 20s. Independent, no company payroll, no favors. Builders hate that about me. But they keep calling because when I sign my name, insurers relax and lawyers go quiet. My reports hold up, always have. I tell people the same thing whenever they try to joke about cutting corners. I don't care how fast you build, I say. I care who has to stand under it. Most of them nod. Some of them smile too hard. I notice the difference. By 7:30, I'm at my first site. A mid-rise apartment complex going up near Glendale. The kind of project that looks impressive from the road and terrifying once you step inside. Rebar sticking out like ribs. Temporary stairs that bounce when you walk them. Men moving fast because speed keeps them paid. I walk the perimeter with a clipboard under my arm, boots crunching on gravel. I check harnesses. I check railings. I check that extension cords aren't lying in pooled water from yesterday's cleanup. It's boring work if you don't understand what happens when one thing fails. I've seen a man fall 3 stories because a guardrail was bolted into drywall instead of steel. I've seen a forklift tip because someone was in a hurry. I've zipped my jacket against the wind while standing next to a stretcher, so I don't rush. By noon, the sun is high, the air thick. I drink water, wipe my face with my sleeve, and finish the last page of notes. Nothing major. A few corrections. No red flags. I sign, date, and take photos for the record. It's just another day. I don't know yet that it won't stay that way. On the drive home, my phone rings. The screen shows Mark, my younger brother. Mark and I share a father, not a childhood. He grew up with our dad full-time after my mother left. I saw them on weekends and holidays until my dad decided it was easier if he didn't have to coordinate anymore. Mark got the house. I got the handshake at 18 and a toolbox. We're cordial now. Polite. He runs a regional development company, townhomes, retail centers, mixed-use stuff, big projects, big loans, big smiles. He wears suits, even when he doesn't need to. Hey, I answer. Ethan, he says, upbeat as always. Quick question. It's never quick. He tells me there was an incident at one of his older sites. Not a new build, something from a few years back. A worker slipped, fell awkwardly. Spine injury. Lawyers are sniffing around. Insurance wants a second look at the original safety clearance. You signed off on that one, he says lightly, like he's reminding me of a shared vacation. I remember the project. A warehouse conversion near Tempe. 2 years ago. Clean file. No violations. Send me the address, I say. I'll review the record. That's why I trust you, he replies. You always do things right. I hang up without answering. Trust is a word people use when they want something to stay simple. That evening, my son calls. Caleb is 21, tall, all angles and restless energy. He studies mechanical engineering at ASU. Smarter than I ever was. Less patient. Dad, he says. You busy? Just got home. As why? Good, he says. I had a question about your work. That's new. He asks about inspections, about how long reports stay on file, about whether things can change years later. His tone is casual, but he's thinking too fast. Jumping ahead of himself. Why? I ask. Class project, he says. Too quickly. Ethics and engineering. I accept it because parents do that. We accept answers that fit. We want to believe the people we love aren't standing at the edge of something dangerous. After we hang up, I heat leftovers and eat standing at the counter. The magnet on the fridge catches my eye again. Safety is not optional. At 9:13 p.m., an email comes in. No subject line, just an address I don't recognize, and a single attachment. Site, photos, zip. I don't open it yet. I shower. I lay out clothes for the morning. I lock the front door, even though nothing has ever happened in this neighborhood worth locking up for. When I finally sit on the couch and open the laptop, the house is quiet again. That empty lot quiet. The zip file opens without trouble. Inside are photos I've never seen before. Angles I didn't photograph. Timestamps from early morning hours. A concrete slab with hairline fractures I don't remember documenting. My name appears on one of the forms in the corner of a frame. Same signature. Same handwriting. I tell myself there's an explanation. I always do. What I don't notice not yet is that one file was saved 3 minutes after the inspection log says I left the site. I close the laptop, turn off the light, and go to bed believing the same thing I've believed my entire career. If you do your job right, nothing can touch you. I fall asleep before that belief has time to crack. I'm back on the road before sunrise the next morning, the sky still washed out gray, the kind that makes everything look unfinished. I don't tell Mark I'm going to the site. I don't tell anyone. Not because I'm hiding it, because once people know you're looking, they start preparing answers. The warehouse sits on the edge of Tempe, tucked behind a strip of auto shops and a tire wholesaler. 2 years ago, it was a shell. Now it's leased out to a logistics company, semi-trucks rolling in and out, forklifts whining inside like insects. I park across the street and sit there longer than I need to. The building looks solid from the outside. Fresh paint, clean lines, no obvious settling. If I were driving past, I wouldn't give it a second glance. That bothers me more than if it looked wrong. I grab my old clipboard from behind the seat. The one I stopped using last year after switching everything to digital. The metal clip is dented, the corners bent. It feels right in my hands, like muscle memory waking up. Inside the lobby, the air smells like cardboard and oil. A young supervisor meets me near the desk. He's polite, nervous, knows who I am as soon as I say my name. We weren't told you were coming, he says. Then you're doing great already, I reply. Can you show me where the fall happened? He leads me down a corridor to the loading floor. Yellow lines painted on concrete, pallets stacked chest high. Everything looks orderly, too orderly, like someone cleaned before company arrived. He stops near a freight elevator and points. Right there, he says, near the expansion joint. I kneel, run my fingers over the concrete seam. There's a faint dip, barely visible. You'd feel it more than see it, enough to catch a boot edge if you weren't paying attention. What time did it happen? I ask. Early, he says, just after shift change, around 6. 7. I nod, but my stomach tightens. That's before most inspections start, before anyone official is watching. I walk the area slowly, measure distances, check railing heights, Photograph everything from multiple angles. I don't rush. I never rush. In my truck afterward, I pull up the original inspection file on my tablet, the one I signed off on 2 years ago. I read it line by line, not skimming, not trusting memory. All the boxes are checked. Expansion joints within tolerance. Surface level acceptable. No note about subsidence. I compare it to the photos from last night's email. Something doesn't line up. The cracks in those photos are subtle, but they're there. The lighting suggests early morning or late afternoon, long shadows, low-angle sun. The timestamps say 6:12 a.m. That's when the fall happened. I drive home slower than usual, my mind circling the same question without landing anywhere. Did this change after I left, or did I miss it? At home, I spread everything out on the dining table like a crime scene. Laptop open, printed reports, photos old and new. The more I look, the worse it feels. The cracks don't look new. They look tired, like they've been there a while, settling quietly, waiting for weight and motion to make them matter. I think about my son's question from the night before, about reports, about time. I shake my head, stand up, and pour a glass of water. My hands are steady. That's something. Around noon, Mark calls again. "You see the place?" he asks. I did. And? I'm still reviewing. There's a pause. A careful one. "Insurance is pushing," he says. "They're talking negligence." "I don't work on timelines," I say. "I work on facts." "I know," he replies. "That's why I'm calling you, and not someone else." There it is, the unspoken part, the reason this is complicated. After we hang up, I open the anonymous email again. This time, I look at the metadata. File creation dates. Software signatures. Whoever sent these knows what they're doing. The photos aren't raw. They've been processed, adjusted just enough to enhance contrast without leaving obvious fingerprints. That takes time. Skill. I forward the files to a colleague I trust, a former inspector turned forensic consultant. I don't explain much. Just ask for an opinion. "Tell me what you see," I write. While I wait, I drive to a coffee shop near campus to clear my head. The place is crowded with students hunched over laptops, earbuds in, worlds collapsing on deadlines I don't miss. Caleb used to sit like that. Still does, probably. I check my phone. No messages from him. I sip burnt coffee and watch a girl at the next table highlight a textbook, the yellow bleeding through thin pages. The ordinariness of it all feels almost insulting, like the world didn't get the memo that something is wrong. When I get home, there's a voicemail waiting, from a number I don't recognize. A woman's voice, calm, professional. "Mr. Walker, this is Angela Ruiz. I represent Daniel Morrow." The name doesn't register at first. He's the worker injured at the Tempe site. "We're requesting a formal statement regarding your original inspection." I sit down slowly. She continues, "Please call me back today. My client is paralyzed from the waist down." The word lands heavy, not dramatic, just final. I call her back an hour later, after pacing the house twice. She doesn't accuse. She doesn't threaten. She asks questions the way people do when they're letting you talk yourself into a corner. "What steps do you take during a surface evaluation? Do you rely on visual confirmation alone? Were there any deviations from standard procedure on that date?" I answer honestly. I always have. When we hang up, my colleague emails back. "These cracks didn't form overnight, likely present at time of original inspection. Subtle, but detectable." I stare at the screen until the words blur. Detectable. That's the word that matters. Detectable means my job. Detectable means responsibility. The sun dips low outside the window. Phoenix evenings come fast, heat releasing its grip just enough to make you believe in relief. I don't feel relieved. My phone vibrates again. A text this time, from Caleb. "Did you look at that old site today?" I type back slowly. "Why?" "There's a delay. Longer than usual. Just wondering," he writes. "People are talking about it at school." I lock the phone and set it face down on the table. Something is shifting. I can feel it. Like standing on concrete you suddenly realize isn't as solid as you thought. I go to bed early, but sleep doesn't come easy. My mind keeps replaying old inspections, old sites, Old mornings where I trusted my eyes because they'd never failed me before. At 2:17 a.m., I sit up in bed, heart pounding, with a single thought that refuses to let go. What if the mistake everyone's looking for isn't the one they think? And worse, what if it isn't just mine? I wake up with that thought, still sitting on my chest, heavy and unmoving, like a concrete block you don't notice until you try to breathe under it. The house is dark. The digital clock on my nightstand reads 4:58 a.m. I've got 32 minutes before my body expects me to be standing in the kitchen, kettle on, life in order. I don't get up. Instead, I stare at the ceiling and replay the inspection from 2 years ago, frame by frame, the way you do when you're trying to remember if you locked the front door. The smell of dust, the echo in the warehouse, the way the foreman joked about the sons while I checked the railing heights. Nothing jumps out. That's what scares me. By the time I finally swing my legs out of bed, my routine is already broken, and that makes everything feel off. The kettle whistles too loud. The coffee tastes wrong. I leave the magnet on the fridge alone, but don't look at it. At 6:20, my phone buzzes. An email from Angela Ruiz. One line. We'll be requesting the full inspection timeline. Timeline. That word again? I pull out my laptop and open the archived file from the Tempe inspection. Not the report, the raw log. Time-stamped entries, GPS coordinates, photo metadata, stuff no one ever looks at unless something's gone wrong. I scroll slowly, deliberately, like I'm afraid the numbers will change if I move too fast. Arrival, 8:02 a.m. Departure, 11:47 a.m. That's what the log says. Then I open the anonymous photos again. Creation time, 11:50 a.m. 3 minutes. 3 minutes isn't much. You can tie a bootlace in 3 minutes. You can forget why you walked into a room, but you can't be in two places at once. I zoom in on one of the images. The angle is low, almost at ground level, like whoever took it was kneeling. The sunlight cuts across the concrete in a thin line. I know that light. It only hits that spot late morning, when the sun clears the loading bay roof, which means the photo was taken after I left. Unless the time is wrong, I lean back in my chair, rubbing my temples. This is how mistakes get made when you start forcing reality to match what you want to be true. I pull out my old field notebook, the one I stopped using because digital records are supposed to be cleaner. I flip to the page with the Tempe address written in my own blocky handwriting. There it is. A small note in the margin I don't remember writing. Joint feels soft. That's all it says. No follow-up. No measurement. No corrective action. Just 4 words. Like a whisper I ignored. My stomach drops. Soft doesn't mean failed. Soft doesn't mean unsafe. Soft means watch it. Watch it means don't forget. I forgot. The realization doesn't hit like panic. It settles in slow, like dust after a collapse. This wasn't sabotage. This wasn't corruption. This was something worse. This was me. I sit there for a long time, staring at that note, until the house warms with morning light and the street outside fills with the sound of cars heading to work. I check my phone. No new messages. No calls from Mark. No follow-up from Caleb. The silence feels deliberate now, like everyone's waiting to see what I'll do. At 9:30, I drive back to the warehouse. This time, I don't park across the street. I pull right up front, badge visible on the dash. I don't ask permission. Inside, the same supervisor greets me, more tense than yesterday. "You find something?" he asks. "I need access to the original construction logs," I say. "From before the conversion." He hesitates, then nods, leads me to a cramped office that smells like toner and stale air. Binders line the shelves, dusty and unlabeled. I start flipping through them, looking for dates, signatures, anything that tells me who poured that slab and when. The paperwork is sloppy, handwritten corrections, missing initials. Then I see a name I recognize, Caleb Walker. My son, printed neatly on an internship timesheet from that summer. Structural assessment assistant. Unpaid. My hands go cold. The date matches the week before my inspection. I sit back in the chair, the vinyl creaking under my weight, and stare at the page like it's a stranger wearing my kid's face. Caleb never mentioned this site. He talked about classes, labs, group projects. He never said he was on a conversion job with my brother's company. I hear my own voice in my head. From years ago, keep your work clean. Don't mix family and inspections. He must have heard it too. I take photos of the logs and leave without saying much. The supervisor doesn't stop me. In the truck, I call Caleb. It rings 4 times before he answers. Hey, Dad, were you ever assigned to the Tempe warehouse? I ask. A pause. Not long. Just long enough. Yeah, he says, briefly. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think it mattered. Did you work on the expansion joints? Another pause. Longer this time. I was helping with measurements, he says, checking specs. Oh, I gripped the steering wheel harder than I need to. Did you notice anything off? I ask. Dad, did you? There's a sound on the line, like he shifted in his seat. They were within tolerance, he says. At the time, I don't raise my voice. I don't accuse. I thank him for answering and hang up. The heat inside the truck feels suffocating now, the air thick and unmoving. Back home, I spread everything out again. My note, the photos, the logs with Caleb's name. The pieces don't fit the way I expected. Not a clean betrayal, not a simple lie. This feels like something built out of fear. That night, Mark comes over unannounced. He stands in the doorway, jacket still on, eyes scanning the house like he's looking for something broken. You digging into this pretty deep, he says. I have to, I reply. He exhales. Ethan, if this turns into a mess, it already is. He steps inside, lowers his voice. There are ways to manage fallout. To 7. I look at him, really look, and realize he's scared too. Not of guilt, of exposure. When he leaves, the house feels smaller. I sit alone at the table, the magnet on the fridge, finally catching my eye again. Safety is not optional. I reach up and pull it off, setting it face down on the counter. For the first time in decades, I don't know what the right thing looks like anymore. I only know this. The mistake I missed didn't stop at concrete. It kept moving, and it didn't land where I thought it would. The next morning doesn't wait for me to catch up. It never does. Problems don't pause out of courtesy. They pile up quietly until the weight forces a decision. I wake at the usual time, but the routine feels counterfeit now, like a copy that's close enough to fool strangers but not the person living it. The kettle whistles. The coffee pours. I don't drink it. I stand at the counter and stare at the empty space on the fridge where the magnet used to be, as if it might tell me what to do next if I look long enough. By 7:10, my phone rings. Mark again. Morning, he says, too cheerful for the hour. You got a minute? I'm listening. Insurance wants an addendum, just a clarification. He says it the way people say, just sign here. They're asking if any post-inspection changes could explain the incident. That's not a clarification, I reply. That's a narrative. There's a beat. He exhales slowly. Ethan, he says, you've done this long enough to know how this works. Nobody's asking you to lie. Just to confirm what we already know. What you already know, I repeat. That the site was compliant when you inspected it, he says, which it was. I don't answer right away. Outside, a sprinkler kicks on somewhere down the block. The rhythmic tick-tick-tick of water hitting rock. Desert neighborhoods always sound like they're trying too hard to stay alive. Send me the language, I say finally. That's my brother, Mark replies, relief creeping into his voice. I knew I could count on you. I hang up before he can say anything else. The email arrives 5 minutes later. 3 paragraphs. Clean, neutral, carefully worded to make one outcome inevitable. If I sign it, the timeline collapses inward. The cracks become a later problem. The injury becomes an unfortunate coincidence. Everyone breathes easier. Everyone except the man who can't feel his legs. At 9, Angela Ruiz calls again. She doesn't waste time. We've requested internal communications from the developer, she says. There's resistance. From my brother, I say. She pauses. Yes. What are you asking of me? I ask. A statement, she says. On record. About your inspection practices. And whether you'd ever alter or supplement A report under pressure. 10 for cries. I almost laugh. Not because it's funny, because the question lands too close to the truth. I don't alter reports, I say, ever. Then we'll need you to stand by that, she replies. Even if it complicates things. Complicates things. Another clean phrase. Another way of saying this will hurt. After the call, I sit in my truck in the driveway. Engine off, keys still in my hand. The sun is already high, the heat pressing down like a physical presence. I don't go anywhere. I just sit there, thinking about the note in my old notebook. Joint feels soft. Soft as a warning. Soft as where things begin to fail. At noon, Caleb texts. Are you mad at me? I stare at the message longer than I should. No, I type back. I just need you to be honest with me. The reply comes almost immediately. I am. It's a simple sentence. 4 letters. And it lands heavier than anything Mark or Angela has said. In the afternoon, I drive to campus. I don't tell Caleb I'm coming. I don't want him prepared. Prepared people perform. I find him in a lab, safety goggles pushed up on his head, hands moving confidently over equipment he understands better than I ever did. He looks older than 21 in that room, focused, competent. He sees me through the glass and stiffens. We step outside into the hallway. Fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant, the sound of a printer spitting out pages somewhere behind a door. You should have told me you were on that site, I say. I didn't think it mattered, he replies again, like repetition might make it true. It mattered to me, I say. It matters now. He shifts his weight, glances down the hallway, then back at me. I didn't mess anything up, he says. I followed the checklist. Did you flag the joint? I ask. His jaw tightens. It was within tolerance, he says. Barely. But it passed. Barely still counts? I ask. He doesn't answer. That's when I see it. Not guilt, not defiance. Fear. The kind that sits behind the eyes and waits. Caleb, I say quietly. Did you tell anyone about my note? His breath catches, just for a second. I was trying to fix it, he says. I didn't think. Who did you tell? I ask. He looks at the floor. Some people, he says. At school. They were talking about the case. I didn't use names. I close my eyes. Rumors don't stay small. They move. They grow legs. That evening, the anonymous email address sends another message. No subject. No greeting. You're looking in the wrong direction. Attached is a single screenshot. A forum thread. Students debating the Tempe accident. Technical language. Speculation. One comment stands out. Highlighted. Original inspection likely missed early-stage subsidence. Posted under a username I recognize. Caleb's. I sit on the couch with the lights off. The glow of the screen painting the room in pale blue. This isn't sabotage. It isn't malice. It's something more fragile and more dangerous. It's my son trying to build a version of the truth he can live with. At 8:47 p.m., Mark calls again. You ready to sign? He asks. No, I say. Silence. Ethan, he says slowly. Do you understand what happens if this goes the other way? Yes, I reply. I do. You lose your license, he says. You lose everything you've built. I know. And Caleb. He stops himself. What about Caleb? I ask. Mark exhales. Nothing, he says. Forget I said anything. That's the moment the pressure becomes personal. Not abstract. Not professional. I hang up and stand in the dark living room. The house quiet around me. The weight of every choice pressing inward. There are ways out of this. I can sign the addendum. I can frame the cracks as new. I can let the story settle where it wants to settle. I can protect my brother's company. I can shield my son from consequences he never intended to face. I can do all of that. And if I do, I'll never sign another report without wondering whose body it's waiting to break. I go to the dining table and spread the papers out one more time. The report, the addendum, the screenshots, my old notebook. I don't make a decision yet, but I finally understand what's being asked of me. Not to choose between right and wrong, but to choose who gets hurt and who I'm willing to become in the process. The email arrives just after dawn, slipping into my inbox with the quiet confidence of something that knows it will be read. No subject line. Same anonymous address. This time, there's no zip file. Just a link. I don't click it right away. I make coffee. I stand at the counter. I let the routine pretend things are still normal for a few minutes longer. Then I sit down and open the link. It leads to a cloud folder, neatly organized. Subfolders labeled by date, photos, short video clips, PDF scans. Whoever put this together didn't rush. They curated. The first video is grainy, security footage from inside the warehouse. The timestamp reads 5:41 a.m. The loading floor is empty, except for one forklift parked crooked near the expansion joint. A man walks into frame wearing a hard hat and a vest. He kneels. He presses something into the concrete seam. He stands, looks around, and walks out. The resolution isn't great, but the logo on the vest is clear. My brother's company. I sit back, heart pounding, a cold rush spreading through my chest. This is what everyone has been looking for. Proof, not of a mistake, but of interference. Someone tampered with the joint after the inspection. Someone created a weak point where none existed. The next file is a still image, zoomed in on the seam. There's a thin metal shim wedged where concrete should be flush. Improvised. Sloppy. The kind of fix you make when you're trying to meet a deadline and don't want to pour again. I flip through the rest of the files. My movement's fast now. Hungry. Emails between site supervisors. A purchase order for materials that don't match the original plan. A message thread where someone writes, "Just make it pass." No one's checking again. This changes everything. Or at least, it looks like it does. My phone buzzes. A text from Mark. "We need to talk. Today." I don't answer. I forward the folder to Angela Ruiz with a short note. Received anonymously. Appears relevant. She calls me 10 minutes later. "This is significant," she says, voice tight with focus. "If this holds up, it shifts liability entirely." "From me," I say. "Yes," she replies. "And toward the developer." I close my eyes. "This doesn't feel clean," I say. "It doesn't have to feel clean," she answers. "It has to be admissible." After the call, I sit there staring at the screen. The evidence laid out in clean digital rows. This is what exoneration looks like. Not relief, but redirection. The weight lifts off your chest and lands squarely on someone else's. I should feel grateful. Instead, my stomach twists. I drive to Mark's office just before noon. He's already pacing when I walk in, jacket off, sleeves rolled, phone pressed to his ear. He ends the call as soon as he sees me. "You get something this morning?" he asks. "I did," I say. His face tightens. "From who?" "Anonymous." "Anonymous." He swears under his breath and runs a hand through his hair. "Ethan," he says, lowering his voice, "you need to understand something. That footage, whatever it is, it doesn't tell the whole story." "It tells enough," I reply. "Someone altered the site after my inspection." He exhales. "We were under pressure, deadlines, city permits. If we stopped every time something looked off, someone is paralyzed." I cut in. The words hang between us, heavy and final. Mark looks away. "That wasn't supposed to happen," he says quietly. There it is. Not denial, not outrage, just regret. The kind that shows up after consequences. "You want me to sign the addendum now?" I ask. "Or does this replace it?" He looks at me, eyes sharp. "This makes the addendum unnecessary, because the blame moves." "Yes," he says, "because the truth comes out." I almost believe him. Back home, I replay the footage again, slower this time, frame by frame. I focus on the man's hands, the way he works, confident, practiced, not panicked. He's done this before. The timestamp nags at me, 5:41 a.m. Too early. Earlier than the shift. Earlier than most supervisors would be on site. Earlier than a decision made in a hurry. I checked the metadata. The video was exported 2 days ago. 2 days ago, the case started circulating online. 2 days ago, students began speculating. 2 days ago, Caleb asked me if I still trusted my own handwriting. I opened the forum thread again, scroll past the technical arguments, look at usernames, timestamps, Caleb posted late at night. Early morning. The same hours as the footage. My chest tightens. I call him. Where are you? I ask when he answers. Library, he says. Why? I need to see you. There's hesitation. Then, okay. We sit across from each other at a small table between shelves of engineering texts. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. Students whisper nearby. Lives intact. Futures unbroken. I slide my phone across the table and play the video. Caleb watches without expression. Do you recognize this? I ask. He nods. Yeah. Who sent it to me? He looks down. I did. The words land quietly. No drama, no build-up. Why? I ask. Because everyone was blaming you, he says. And it wasn't fair. Is it true? I ask. Was the site altered after my inspection? Yes, he says quickly. I found records. People admitted things. It's all real. What about the timing? I press. The edits? The framing? He hesitates. I cleaned it up, he admits. Enhanced it, made it clearer. You made it point in one direction, I say. He looks up at me then, eyes red, voice tight. Because that's where it belongs. I lean back, suddenly exhausted. Caleb, I say, did you ever consider what happens if this holds up? He nods. Your name gets cleared. And then? I ask. He swallows. Mark's company takes the hit. And the person who put the shim there? I ask. He doesn't answer. The silence stretches. You didn't do this to protect the truth, I say. You did it to protect me. And you, he snaps. And the worker. Because if they say it was your fault, then the case ends. No one looks deeper. That's when it hits me. This evidence doesn't just point away from me. It points away from something else. Something earlier. Something smaller. Something that doesn't show up well on camera. My note. Joint feels soft. A warning that was never followed up. A flaw that made the later tampering possible. I stand up slowly. This doesn't fix it, I say. It just changes who bleeds first. Caleb looks at me, fear and frustration tangled together. I was trying to help, he says. I know, I reply. That's what scares me. I leave the library without another word. The image of that altered joint burned into my mind. For the first time since this started, I understand the trap. The evidence everyone is chasing is real but incomplete, and if I let it carry the story, it won't end with the truth. It will end wherever it's most convenient. The next 48 hours move fast, not because anyone is rushing me, but because once a story finds momentum, it doesn't need permission anymore. It pulls people along with it, whether they're ready or not. Angela Ruiz calls first thing the next morning. We've authenticated most of the files, she says. The footage is admissible. The emails are consistent with internal communications. This changes the case. In whose favor? I ask, even though I already know the answer. Yours, she replies. And Daniel Morrow's. I close my eyes. At whose expense? There's a pause. That's not my role, she says carefully. My role is to establish liability. After the call, I sit in my truck in the driveway again, keys resting in my palm like a decision I haven't made yet. The neighborhood is awake now, garage doors opening, kids waiting for school buses, life continuing on schedules that don't care what I'm about to lose. I open my laptop and begin organizing everything, my reports, the anonymous files, the forum screenshots, the construction logs. I build a timeline. Not the one Mark wants. Not the one Caleb tried to steer. A neutral one. Cold. Chronological. And that's when I see it clearly. The cracks didn't cause the accident. The tampering didn't cause the accident. They allowed it. The original weakness, the one I noted and failed to pursue, was the door left unlocked. Everything else walked through it. By noon, Mark calls again. They're calling an emergency board meeting, he says. This is getting out of hand. You mean out of your control? I reply. Don't do that, he snaps. Not now. I'm not doing anything, I say. The facts are. He lowers his voice. Ethan, listen to me. If this goes public the way Ruiz wants, my company could fold. Hundreds of people lose jobs. And if it doesn't? I ask. One man already lost his legs. Thanks for watching. That wasn't intentional, Mark says. Neither was my mistake, I reply. That doesn't undo it. He exhales hard. You're about to burn everything down for a technicality. I look at the steering wheel, worn smooth, where my hands have rested for years. No, I say quietly. I'm about to stop pretending it was just a technicality. I hang up and drive. Not to a site, not to a lawyer's office, to the warehouse. This time, I don't bring a clipboard. I walk the floor alone, ignoring the stares, the whispers. I kneel at the expansion joint again, pressing my fingers into the seam. It still dips, just slightly. Enough. I remember standing here 2 years ago, sun on my back, checklist nearly complete, already thinking about my next appointment. I remember choosing efficiency over curiosity. That night, I meet Angela at her office. She spreads the evidence out across the table, methodical, precise. With this, she says, tapping the footage, we establish post-inspection negligence by the developer. And before that? I ask. She looks up. What do you mean? Before the tampering, I say. Before the shim. What happens to the initial inspection? She studies me for a moment, like she's recalculating the man sitting across from her. Your report stands unless challenged, she says. No one's doing that now. I am, I reply. The room goes still. Ethan, she says slowly, I don't recommend that. I didn't ask for a recommendation. You'd be reopening your own liability, she warns, voluntarily. Yes. She leans back. Why? I think of Caleb in the lab, Mark in his office, Daniel Morrow in a hospital bed. Because the truth doesn't end where it's convenient, I say. She nods once. Then we need to be clear. If you submit a supplemental statement acknowledging a missed indicator, your license will be reviewed. I know. I hope stated. And the footage? She asks. We still use it? Yes, I say, but not as an escape hatch. I leave her office knowing I've just stepped onto a path that doesn't come back around. That night, Caleb shows up at my house. He doesn't knock. He just walks in like he used to when he was younger, when this place still felt like home to him. You're throwing me under the bus, he says, voice tight. No, I reply. I'm stepping in front of it. He paces the living room, hands in his hair. You don't have to do this. Yes, I say. I do. You're ruining your career, he says. For what? To make a point? For consistency, I answer. So that when I tell people safety matters, it doesn't come with exceptions. He stops pacing and looks at me. I was scared, he says quietly. I thought if they blamed you, it would all stop. I know, I say. And now? He asks. Now it keeps going, I reply. But honestly, he sinks onto the couch, shoulders slumped. I was trying to be like you. The words cut deeper than any accusation. I sit across from him. Then learn this part too. The next morning, I submit my statement. It's short, precise. I reference my original note. I acknowledge that I identified a potential issue and failed to pursue it with appropriate follow-up. I take responsibility for that omission. No excuse, no conditions. By afternoon, the call comes. The state board wants to speak with me. By evening, Mark texts, "You didn't have to do this." I don't respond. By midnight, my name is already circulating online, not as a victim, not as a villain, but as something worse. An example. I lie awake in bed, the ceiling fan cutting the air into steady pieces, and understand something with brutal clarity. I've been moving this whole time. I just haven't been moving toward safety. I've been moving toward accountability. And now that I'm here, there's no map left to follow, only consequences waiting to be claimed. The board hearing is scheduled for the following Thursday. Not urgent enough to stop the world, but close enough that every hour between now and then feels like borrowed time. I'm told to bring documentation, correspondence, anything relevant. I already know what that really means. Bring your past, lay it on the table, let strangers decide what it's worth. In the meantime, the story keeps moving without me. An article goes up on a local news site, nothing dramatic, just a clean headline about a construction accident, a disputed inspection, and newly surfaced evidence. My name is there, halfway down, spelled correctly. That almost hurts more than if it weren't. People start calling. old colleagues, former clients, a guy I once failed on a rail height violation who swore I ruined his quarter. Everyone has questions. Most of them aren't really questions. Did you see this coming? Why would you admit fault now? Were you pressured? I give the same answer every time. I'm correcting the record. It sounds calm. It doesn't feel that way. Caleb doesn't come by again. He texts once, late at night. I shouldn't have posted anything. I stare at the message for a long time before replying. We'll talk after Thursday. He doesn't respond. On Wednesday afternoon, Angela calls. There's a complication, she says. I'm sitting at the dining table, papers spread out in front of me, like I'm still trying to build a defense I don't intend to use. What kind? I ask. The developer's legal team submitted an affidavit, she says. They're conceding post-inspection alterations. That's not a complication, I reply. That's what the footage shows. Yes, she says. But they're also asserting that the alterations were corrective, not negligent. I close my eyes. They're saying the shim was installed to address a flaw that already existed, she continues. A flaw noted but not escalated in your original inspection. I open my eyes slowly. They're using my note, I say. Yes, she confirms. They're arguing that your acknowledgement of the weakness prompted an attempted fix, that the fault chain starts with you. For a moment, I don't feel angry. I feel something worse, relief, because this version of the truth fits better than the last one. It doesn't let anyone off cleanly. It doesn't flatten the story into heroes and villains. It admits what I've known all along, that my mistake mattered. What does this do to Daniel Morrow's case? I ask. Angela hesitates. It complicates damages, she says. Shared liability cases always do. So the footage doesn't save him, I say. No, she replies. It just explains how things got worse. After the call, I sit there listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, the ordinary noise of a life that's about to change shape. I drive to the hospital that evening. I don't tell anyone I'm going. I don't ask permission. I just go. Daniel Morrow is in a rehab wing that smells like antiseptic and effort. Machines hum softly, televisions flicker on walls, no one is really watching. He's younger than I expected. Early 30s. Broad shoulders that look wrong, sitting still. His legs are wrapped in thin blankets, motionless. He looks up when I knock lightly on the open door. Can I help you? He asks. My name is Ethan Walker, I say. I inspected the site where you were hurt. Recognition flashes across his face. Not anger, not gratitude, assessment. You're the guy, he says. Yes. He nods toward a chair. You might as well sit. I do. We don't talk for a moment. The silence isn't hostile. It's cautious. They told me you came forward, he says finally. I did. Why? I think about all the answers I could give. Ethics, responsibility, integrity. None of them feel honest enough. Because I missed something, I say. And because pretending I didn't would make this easier for everyone but you. He watches me closely. They also told me someone messed with the floor, he says. Yes, I reply, after my inspection. So whose fault is it? He asks. The question isn't angry. It's tired. It's shared, I say, which doesn't make it lighter. It just makes it harder to carry. He exhales slowly and looks at the ceiling. They keep telling me it was an accident, he says, that nobody meant for this to happen. Intent doesn't change outcome, I reply. He smiles faintly at that. You sound like my old foreman. We talk for another 10 minutes. About nothing important. About rehab schedules. About the heat. About how hospitals always feel like they're waiting for something. When I leave, he says, I don't hate you. I nod. I didn't come here for that. The board hearing room is smaller than I expected. Beige walls, a long table, 5 people who don't know me well enough to care how this ends. They ask about procedure, about training, about why I didn't follow up on the note. I answer everything plainly. One of them leans forward. You're aware your admission may result in suspension or revocation of your license. Yes. Explas, actually president. And you're proceeding anyway? Yes. There's a murmur among them. Not disapproval, curiosity. After 2 hours, They tell me they'll deliberate and notify me in writing. When I step outside, my phone buzzes. A message from Mark. They're shifting everything onto you. I type back. They're telling the whole story. You didn't have to protect them, he replies. I stare at the screen. I'm not protecting anyone. I type. I'm stopping the lie from choosing for us. That night, Caleb finally comes over. He looks exhausted, hollowed out. I talked to a professor, he says. They told me what I did with the footage could be considered manipulation. Yes, I say. I thought I was helping, he says again, like repetition might undo the damage. I know, I reply. He sits down heavily. I wanted to fix it, he says. I thought if I could control the narrative, maybe no one would look at the beginning. The beginning is where it matters, I say. He nods, eyes wet. I was afraid you'd hate me. I shake my head. I was afraid you'd never learn how heavy the truth can be. We sit there together, not reconciled, not broken, just exposed. Late that night, an email comes in from the board. Effective immediately. Your license is suspended pending final review. I read it twice. Then I closed the laptop. For the first time since this started, the truth isn't moving anymore. It's landed, and it doesn't look like victory. It looks like responsibility, fully awake, with nowhere left to hide. The suspension email changes the air in the house. Not in any dramatic way, no alarms, no sudden silence, but in the way a room feels after someone says something you can't take back. Everything is still where it was, yet nothing sits the same. I wake the next morning with nowhere to be. That's new. For nearly 3 decades, my days have been measured in appointments, site visits, checklists, signatures. Now there's a clean block of empty time where my work used to live. I make coffee out of habit and realize halfway through pouring it that I don't need to rush. I sit at the table and drink it slowly. The taste is the same. I'm not. At 9:17 a.m., Caleb knocks. He stands on the porch longer than he needs to, backpack slung over one shoulder like he's not sure if he's staying or leaving. When I open the door, he doesn't say anything at first. They suspended your license, he says finally. Yes, because of me. No, I reply. Because of a choice I made. Yours just forced it sooner. He steps inside, eyes scanning the living room like it's unfamiliar territory. Maybe it is now. Maybe it always was. We sit across from each other at the table where I've spread paperwork for weeks. Today it's clear. No reports. No evidence. Just wood grain and sunlight. I need you to tell me something, I say. He nods. Not what you did, I continue. I know that. I need to know why you were so afraid. He swallows. His fingers drum against the table once, then stop. They were talking about criminal negligence, he says. At school, in class, about cases like this. And? I prompt. And someone asked what happens when an inspector signs off on something that fails later, he says. And the professor said, it depends on what they knew and when. I wait. They said if there's proof the inspector noticed a problem and didn't escalate it, that can follow them, he continues, civilly. Sometimes worse. It's 79. I nod. That's true. He looks up at me, eyes sharp with something close to panic. You've built your whole life on being right, he says, on never missing things. I thought if this stuck to you, if this became the story, you'd lose everything. I lean back in my chair. So you tried to redirect it, I say. Yes, he replies. I thought if I could make it about Mark's company, about what they did after you'd be safe. And what about the worker? I ask. His jaw tightens. I thought that would help him too. That part matters, I say. But it wasn't the part you were most afraid of. He doesn't answer right away. I was afraid you'd look at yourself differently, he says quietly. The words land harder than I expect. I've watched you my whole life, he continues. You never bend. You never let things slide. You're the guy people point to when they want to talk about integrity. He shakes his head. I didn't want this to be the thing that broke that. I study him for a long moment. Not the student, not the engineer, just my son. Young enough to believe people are only one thing at a time. I broke it myself, I say. Long before you touched that footage. He looks at me, confused. That note, I say. The one I didn't follow up on. That was the moment. Everything after just exposed it. He exhales, shoulders sagging. I didn't want you to be human, he says. I almost smile. Almost. That afternoon, Mark calls again. He doesn't start with accusations this time. His voice is tired. They're offering a settlement, he says. Shared liability. No admission of wrongdoing from the company. And Daniel, I ask. Compensation, he says. Not enough, but substantial. And the record? I ask. Your admission stays, he replies. It's already public. I nod, even though he can't see me. Are you okay with this? He asks. No, I say. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. He sighs. You always were impossible. After we hang up, I sit in the backyard and watch the sun crawl across the gravel. The heat settles in. Phoenix doesn't care about moral reckonings. It just keeps burning. That evening, Angela emails me a draft of the final liability report. I read it slowly. My name appears exactly where it should. No exaggeration, no mercy, just facts. Inspector noted early-stage irregularity and failed to pursue further evaluation. That sentence will follow me longer than any certification ever did. I don't ask her to change it. 2 days later, the settlement becomes public. Comments explode online. Some people call me brave. Others call me stupid. A few call me reckless. None of them were there. None of them held the clipboard. None of them felt the weight of that moment when you decide whether to look closer or move on. Caleb reads everything. I know because he sends me screenshots, sometimes with nothing written, like he doesn't know what to say. On Friday night, he finally does. I don't know how to live with this. I type back. Neither do I. We'll learn. That weekend, I get a letter from Daniel Morrow. Handwritten, uneven. He thanks me for coming to see him. He says the settlement won't fix his legs, but it might fix his house, his truck, his sense that he wasn't erased. At the bottom, he writes, I don't think you meant to hurt anyone, but you didn't hide when it mattered. I fold the letter and set it in the drawer with my old notebooks. Monday morning, I wake up at 5:30 out of habit. There's still nowhere to go. But for the first time since this started, I understand the real damage. It wasn't the crack in the concrete. It was the moment fear convinced someone that controlling the story mattered more than facing it. Caleb tried to save me from becoming someone he couldn't recognize. Instead, he forced both of us to meet the version that had always been there, waiting for a mistake to give it shape. And now that we've seen it, there's no pretending it never existed. Only deciding what we do next with what's left. Losing your license doesn't happen all at once. There's no dramatic moment where someone comes to take your badge. No door slammed in your face. It happens in pieces. Small, ordinary interruptions that slowly hollow out the shape of your life. The first piece is the phone. It stops ringing. By midweek, the constant vibration I used to ignore is gone. No site managers asking for quick sign-offs. No project coordinators checking availability. No, just one question calls that turn into favors people swear they won't ask again. Silence fills the gaps where my work used to live. I start noticing how much of my identity was built around being needed. The second piece is the email. I open my inbox out of habit and see nothing but newsletters and automated notices. My inspection software sends a reminder that my license status has changed. Neutral language, red text. Access restricted. I close the laptop and sit there. Hands folded, like I'm waiting for instructions that won't come. On Thursday, a contractor I worked with for years stops by unannounced. Rick. Big man, loud voice, always complaining about regulations until he needed them to protect him. He stands on my porch, shifting his weight, eyes scanning the street like he doesn't want to be seen. Just wanted to say, he begins, then stops, clears his throat. This whole thing, it's rough. I nod. They're saying you fell on your sword, he says. I stepped where I should have stepped earlier, I reply. He frowns. You didn't have to. We stand there in the heat for a moment, both of us understanding the subtext. If I had kept quiet, his world would still make sense. If you need work, he says finally, I know some people. Doing what? I ask. He shrugs. Consulting. Off the books. I shake my head. No. He sighs. You're still that guy. I don't answer. He leaves. The third piece is harder to name. It's the way people look at you when they know your story but don't know how to place it. At the grocery store, at the gas station, familiar faces that don't quite recognize you anymore. I become a cautionary tale in passing conversation. "That's him," someone whispers. "The inspector." No one says the rest. They don't need to. Caleb feels it too. He stops going to certain classes, avoids the lab. When he does go, he keeps his head down, shoulders hunched like he's bracing for impact. "They're not wrong," he says one night, sitting across from me at the table. "They say I tried to manipulate evidence." "Did you?" I ask. He nods. "Yes." "Then they're not wrong," I say. He looks at me, frustration flaring. "You're not helping." "I'm not supposed to help you feel better," I reply. "I'm supposed to help you see clearly." He pushes back from the table and stands. "I ruined everything." "Was Reset?" "No," I say. "You exposed it." That doesn't comfort him. I didn't expect it to. A week later, the final decision arrives. License revoked. Minimum reapplication period. 5 years. I read the letter once, then again. Then I fold it neatly and place it in the drawer beside Daniel's letter and my old notebooks. 5 years is a long time. Long enough for the world to forget why you mattered. Long enough for you to forget who you were. I don't tell Caleb right away. I go for a drive instead. Out past the city, where the development's thin and the desert opens up. The heat stretches everything. Time, distance, regret. I pull over near an abandoned lot. Concrete foundations half poured, rebar rusting in the sun. A project that stopped midstream. Money ran out. Decisions deferred too long. It looks familiar. When I get home, Caleb is waiting. "They emailed me," he says, "about an academic review. They're considering disciplinary action." I nod. I expected that. "I could lose my program," he says. "Yes. And you're okay with that?" he asks, anger creeping in. I look at him carefully. "No," I say. "But I won't lie to stop it." He clenches his jaw. "You're choosing principles over your own son." I take a breath. This is the moment I've been avoiding. "I'm choosing not to teach you that principles only matter when they don't hurt," I say. He turns away, pacing. "You think I don't get it?" he snaps. "You think I don't feel this every second?" "I think you feel it," I reply. "I just don't think you know what to do with it yet." He stops and looks at me, eyes shining. "What if this follows me forever?" he asks. I don't answer right away. "Then you carry it," I say finally, "and you decide what kind of man carries it." That night, I take a job unloading trucks at a warehouse near my house. Night shift. Temporary, physical, honest. No clipboard, no authority, just work. My back aches in ways it hasn't in years. My hands blister. I don't complain. When the supervisor hands me a safety vest, I notice it's frayed at the edges, reflective tape peeling. I mention it. He waves it off. "It's fine." I look at the vest. I look at him. "It's not," I say. He laughs. "You some kind of inspector?" "No," I reply. "Just someone who's seen what happens when you ignore small things." He stares at me for a moment, then nods. "I'll get a new one." It's a small victory, one no one sees. Weeks pass. The noise fades. The online comments slow. New scandals replace mine. But the cost doesn't leave. It lives in quiet moments, in choices that no longer belong to me, in the way Caleb avoids my eyes when he talks about his future. One evening, he hands me a letter. From the university, they've decided not to expel him, probation instead. Ethics training, supervised projects. He exhales like he's been holding his breath for months. "They said what I did was wrong," he says. "But they also said owning it mattered." I nod. "It does." He looks at me then, really looks. "I don't know if I can be like you," he says. I think about the drawer full of letters. The license I won't get back. The job that never calls anymore. "I don't want you to be like me," I reply. "I want you to be better at stopping sooner." He swallows and nods. Later that night, alone in the living room, I sit in the quiet and let the weight settle. This is the cost, not punishment, not exile, but the permanent knowledge that some things, once broken, don't go back to how they were. They become part of you, and you either pretend they aren't there, or you learn how to stand with them without flinching. There's a moment after everything collapses when you expect the ground to keep falling away. When it doesn't, you're left standing there, surprised by your own balance. That's where I am now. The revocation is final. The settlement is public. The story has moved on to other people's mistakes. There's nothing left to appeal, explain, or defend. The decision I made is no longer something I'm making, it's something I've already lived into. What's left is how I carry it. On a Monday morning that looks exactly like every other Monday I used to work, I wake at 5:30 again. The habit is still there, steady as a heartbeat. I lie in bed for a few minutes, listening to the house. No urgency, no schedule pulling me forward. I get up anyway, not because I have somewhere to be, but because staying still feels like a lie. I make coffee and sit at the table, sunlight cutting across the wood, where my reports used to spread out. The drawer beside me is heavy with paper now. The board's letter, Daniel's note, my old field notebook. Evidence of who I was and who I chose to be when that version cracked. At 7, my phone buzzes. A number I don't recognize. "This is Thomas Avery," the voice says when I answer. "I'm with the State Occupational Safety Division." I don't interrupt him. People in his position are used to silence on the other end. "We're conducting a review of inspection practices statewide," he continues. "Your case came up." I wait. "We're not calling to revisit your license," he says. "That's settled." "Then why are you calling?" I ask. There's a pause then. "Because you documented something most people would have buried." I let that sit. "We're developing training modules," he says. "Case studies, failures, near misses, the real kind. We'd like to include yours if you're willing." "To do what?" I ask. "To explain where the system failed," he says, "including where you did." Over. I look down at my hands. The scars from years of work. The fresh calluses from unloading trucks. "And what does that get me?" I ask. "Nothing," he says honestly. "But it might keep someone else from repeating it." I close my eyes. "I'll do it," I say. When I hang up, the house feels different. Not lighter, just clearer. That afternoon, Caleb comes by after class. He's quieter these days, less reactive, like someone who's learned that thinking first isn't weakness. "They put me on a project," he says. "Ethics review. Case analysis." I nod. "About what?" He hesitates. "Yours." I meet his eyes. "And they want me to present what went wrong," he says. "From a systems perspective." "And from a personal one?" I ask. He swallows. "That too." I wait. "They asked if I'd be willing to talk about what I did," he says. "The forum post, the footage." I nod again. "I said yes," he adds quickly, before I could talk myself out of it. I Falloned. A tight knot in my chest loosens slightly. "That was the right call," I say. He studies me. "You really believe that?" "I do." Later that week, I stand in a small conference room at a government building downtown. No cameras, no reporters, just a dozen people in folding chairs, notebooks open, faces neutral. I don't dress up. Jeans, plain shirt, boots that still smell faintly of oil. I tell them the story exactly the way it happened. Not the dramatic version, the boring one. The note I wrote and didn't follow. The checklist I trusted too much. The pressure I didn't feel until later. I don't soften it. I also don't perform regret. I let the facts do what facts do when you don't get in their way. When I finish, one of the inspectors raises his hand. "What would you do differently?" he asks. I don't answer right away. "I would slow down," I say finally, "and I would treat uncertainty as a reason to stop, not a reason to assume." Another hand goes up. "Do you think losing your license was necessary?" a woman asks. I think of the warehouse floor, the shim, Daniel's legs. "Yes," I say, "because if the cost hadn't been real, the lesson wouldn't be either." Afterward, no one claps. That's fine. This isn't that kind of room. On the drive home, I feel something close to peace. Not relief, not pride. Alignment. That night, Caleb and I sit on the back patio, the heat finally easing as the sun drops. The desert smells like dust and cooling stone. They asked me something today, he says. What? I ask. They asked if I'd handle things differently now, he replies. And would you? I ask. Yes, he says without hesitation. I wouldn't try to control how it looks. I'd say what happened and let it be ugly. I nod. Good. He glances at me. That answer came from you. Then use it, I say. But don't borrow the rest. He smiles faintly. Weeks pass. The training sessions continue. My days find a new rhythm. Warehouse work at night, consulting on paper during the day, not inspections, not sign-offs, just explanation. Context, warnings written in plain language. People start calling me something else now. Not inspector, instructor. I don't correct them. One afternoon, I receive an email from Daniel. He started physical therapy. It hurts. He hates it. He's doing it anyway. At the bottom, he writes, I don't know if what you did will ever feel worth it, but I believe you meant it. That's enough. I print the email and put it in the drawer. On a Sunday morning, months later, I wake at 5:30 again. Habit, still there. This time, I don't get up right away. I lie there and think about the version of myself who believed being right was a shield, who thought consistency was the same as care. I don't hate that man, but I don't want him back. When I finally stand, the house is quiet in that same empty parking lot way, but it doesn't feel hollow anymore. It feels honest. The decision I made didn't save my career. It didn't protect my family. It didn't make the damage disappear. What it did was simpler and harder. It made the truth the heaviest thing in the room. And once you've lived in a room like that, you don't forget how to stand in it. You just learn to stop looking for exits that don't exist. The world doesn't reset after a decision like mine. It rearranges itself slowly, quietly, like furniture moved in the dark. You bump into things you didn't know were there. You learn the shape of the room by bruises. 3 months pass before I notice I've stopped counting weeks. That's the first sign that something has settled. The warehouse job becomes routine. Same dock, same supervisor, same shift that starts when most people are winding down their evenings. The work is simple, repetitive, honest in a way my old job never was. Boxes come in, boxes go out. Gravity behaves exactly the way it's supposed to. My body complains more than it used to. Knees stiff in the morning. Lower back tight by the 3rd hour of lifting. I don't fight it. Pain, at least, doesn't lie. A guy named Luis works the dock next to me. Late 30s. 2 kids. Knows everyone's name by the 2nd shift. One night, he watches me adjust the placement of a pallet before the forklift approaches. You did inspections or something, he asks. Used to, I say. He nods like that explains everything. You guys always see stuff nobody else does. I almost correct him. Almost say not always. Instead, I just say sometimes. During the day, I work on training materials for the state. Not glamorous. No credit line. Just diagrams, timelines. Plain language explanations of how small failures line up when no one intervenes. I focus on one concept more than any other. Escalation. Not panic. Not blame. Escalation. The moment when uncertainty becomes a reason to stop pretending. It turns out that idea lands harder than any regulation ever did. Emails start coming in from inspectors I've never met. Short messages. No introductions. I had a note like yours once. I didn't follow up. Nothing happened. Until it did. I'm slowing down now. I read them all. I don't reply to most. This isn't about me becoming a guide. It's about people recognizing a mirror when it's finally held still. Caleb's semester ends with more strain than celebration. He passes everything, but the ease is gone. He studies differently now, slower, more deliberate. He double-checks assumptions that used to slide by. One evening, he brings his laptop to the table and opens a draft. They want a reflection paper, he says. Not technical, personal. I nod. What are you stuck on? The part where I explain why I did what I did, he says, without just saying I was scared. I think for a moment, fear isn't the problem, I say. Fear decides where you look. The problem is pretending it didn't. He types that down without comment. Later, he looks up. Do you regret not signing the addendum? The question is careful, measured, like he's learned how to ask things now. No, I say. Even knowing what it cost? He asks. Especially knowing, I reply. He absorbs that quietly. Mark doesn't call anymore. I hear about him through other people. His company restructures, sells off assets, keeps operating, but leaner, quieter. The swagger is gone. One afternoon, a letter arrives with his handwriting on the envelope. Inside, just a single page. I'm still angry, it begins. But I'm also tired of pretending this was only about you. I read it once. Then again. We should have stopped sooner, he writes. All of us. There's no apology. There doesn't need to be. I fold the letter and place it in the drawer with the others. Not as a trophy, as a record. The drawer has become something like a ledger now. Not of victories or losses, but of things faced. Daniel writes again in late spring. Physical therapy is slower than he hoped. He's adapting, learning new limits, learning new strengths. He doesn't ask me for anything. That matters. On a Saturday afternoon, I attend a small community safety workshop at a high school gym. Folding chairs, coffee and paper cups, parents, tradespeople, a few students. I speak for 20 minutes. No slides, no authority, just a story about a note in the margin and what happens when you don't respect it. A woman approaches me afterward, early 40s, construction boots, paint under her fingernails. My husband fell last year, she says. Different site, different reason. I wait. They said it was just one of those things, she continues. I believed them. I don't anymore. I nod. Thank you, she says. I don't say you're welcome. Gratitude isn't what this is about. That night, Caleb and I sit on the couch watching a game neither of us cares much about. It's comfortable in a way it hasn't been for a long time. Do you ever miss it? He asks. The job? I consider the question, honestly. I miss being useful, I say. I don't miss being unquestioned. Thanks for watching. He thinks about that. I don't think I want a career where people stop questioning me, he says. That's a good instinct, I reply. Protect it. Summer arrives in full force. Phoenix turns hostile again. The heat makes everything sharper, mistakes included. One evening after work, I notice the supervisor hasn't replaced a damaged ramp plate. Same one I pointed out weeks ago. It's worse now. Bent more, edges curling. I bring it up again. We'll get to it, he says. When? I ask. He shrugs. Soon. I look at the ramp. I look at the forklift traffic. I don't have authority here. No badge, no clipboard, just experience. I say, I won't work that dock until it's fixed. He studies me for a long moment. Then he sighs. Fine. The plate is replaced the next day. No one thanks me. That's fine too. Late one night, after a long shift, I sit alone in the kitchen with a glass of water and open the drawer. I take out the board letter. The license revocation. Still clean. Still official. I don't hate it anymore. I think about how close I came to choosing comfort over consequence. How easy it would have been to let the story bend just enough to save face. I think about how heavy the truth felt when I finally stopped pushing it away. The weight hasn't changed. I have. Caleb walks in, hair still damp from a shower. They accepted my paper, he says. Good, I reply. They said it was honest, he adds. Uncomfortable, but honest. I nod. He hesitates, then says, I don't think I'll ever stop thinking about this. I look at him. Good, I say. That means it did its job. He smiles, just a little. Later, when the house is quiet again, I turn off the light and stand in the dark, listening to the steady hum of appliances, the distant sound of traffic, the ordinary life continuing outside these walls. This is what remains. Not redemption, not absolution, but a steadier understanding of where responsibility begins and how far it travels when you refuse to drop it. It isn't light, but it's real. And for the first time in a long while, that feels like enough. 5 years is a long time when you're waiting for something to come back. It's even longer when you realize you're not sure you want it to. The letter from the board sits in the drawer for months before I touch it again. Not because it scares me anymore, but because opening it feels like reopening a version of myself I've already finished burying. Some things deserve to stay where you put them. Life, meanwhile, keeps making decisions without asking my permission. The warehouse promotes Luis to shift lead. He asks if I want more hours. I say yes. The work is harder now. More responsibility. Fewer excuses. I like that. When something goes wrong, you see it immediately. A pallet tips. A strap snaps. A forklift stalls. Cause and effect don't hide behind paperwork. I start waking up later. Not much later, 6, sometimes 6:15, but enough to feel the difference. The habit loosens. The urgency fades. Caleb moves into a small apartment closer to campus. We help him carry boxes up 2 flights of stairs in the August heat. He's quieter than he used to be, but steadier. Less interested in being impressive. More interested in being precise. Before we leave, he hands me a set of keys. Just in case, he says. I take them and don't joke about it. I've learned when not to soften things. His final year project takes shape slowly. He tells me about it in pieces: risk modeling, failure chains, ethical escalation. He doesn't ask my opinion often. When he does, it's specific. One night, he asks, if you could change one thing about how you worked, what would it be? I think for a moment. I would have treated doubt as information, I say. Not as something to overcome. He nods and writes that down. Mark calls once, out of the blue, late on a Sunday afternoon. His voice sounds older. I sold my share, he says. Kept enough to stay afloat. That's probably for the best, I reply. There's a pause. I blamed you for a long time, he admits. Then I realized I was angry because you stopped doing what I depended on. I don't respond. Not because I don't have anything to say, but because some realizations don't need an audience. Anyway, he says, I wanted you to know. I do, I reply. We hang up. It doesn't feel like closure. It feels like distance settling into its proper shape. The State Safety Division invites me back twice more that year. Different rooms, different faces, same questions. Each time, I tell the story with fewer words. I don't need them anymore. What people seem to remember isn't the accident, or the footage, or the settlement. They remember the note. Joint feels soft. They laugh sometimes. Uncomfortable, like it's too small to carry so much weight. That's usually when I say, small things are the only things that ever do. I was no. One evening, as I'm locking up the dock, the supervisor tells me a new guy almost stepped into an uncovered pit earlier that day. Missed it by inches. He wasn't paying attention, the supervisor says. Were we? I ask. He looks at me, confused. The pit, I clarify. Was it marked? He hesitates. Not yet. Then it wasn't his mistake, I say. The pit gets marked before the next shift. It doesn't make the news. No one posts about it online. Nothing bad happens. That's the kind of outcome I used to take credit for without realizing how fragile it was. In the spring, Daniel Morrow sends a photo. He's in a modified truck, hand controls installed, smiling in a way that looks like work. He writes that he's starting a job doing dispatch coordination. Different work, same industry. He says it feels good to be useful again. At the bottom, he adds, I still think about that floor. So do I. One morning, almost a year after the revocation, I open the drawer and take out the letter again. I read it slowly. 5 years, minimum. I imagine reapplying, the forms, the interviews, the possibility of standing on a site again with a clipboard in my hand. The image doesn't feel like relief. It feels like pressure. That night, I tell Caleb, you don't have to, he says immediately. I know, I reply. What are you thinking? He asks. I'm thinking the work I needed to do with that license is already done, I say. And the work I'm doing now doesn't require it. He studies me. Are you sure? No, I say. But I'm finally comfortable not being sure. He smiles at that. Really smiles. That's new, he says. Yes, I reply. It is. On a quiet Sunday morning, I wake up without checking the time. The house is still. The air cooler than it will be later. I sit at the table with a glass of water and look around. The magnet never went back on the fridge. I never replaced it. I don't need slogans anymore. What I have instead is a simple rule I don't write down because I don't want it turning into something decorative. If something feels off, stop. Not pause. Not adjust. Stop. That rule costs time, money, comfort. It costs less than pretending. Caleb graduates in May. We sit in folding chairs under the sun while names are called and futures are announced like they're fixed things. When his name comes up, he looks out at the crowd and finds me. He doesn't wave. He nods. That's enough. Afterward, as we walk back to the car, he says, I used to think being good meant being unbreakable. And now, I ask. Now I think it means noticing the crack before someone falls through it. I put my hand on his shoulder. That's it, I say. That's the whole thing. The house feels different that night. Not fuller, not emptier. Finished. I stand in the kitchen with the lights off, listening to the hum of appliances, the distant city breathing through the walls. I think about the man I was when this started. Certain, respected, wrong in ways I didn't know how to see. I don't miss him. What I stand on now isn't authority or reputation or a clean record. It's attention. It's the willingness to stop when everyone else wants to keep moving. It's knowing that the truth doesn't always save you, but it always leaves you somewhere you can stand without lying to yourself. That's the ground I'm on now. It isn't smooth, but it's solid enough. And this time, I know how to feel the difference.